Hey, it's episode 430 of the 343 podcast. You know, here in American soccer, everybody says we don't have the culture. We don't have the right culture. Look, that's only a half truth because it's only half of the American soccer loving public that doesn't have the culture. It just so happens that that half is the one that controls the game here. And lo and behold, look, when we actually import the proper soccer culture embodied in, say, Mauricio Pochettino or embodied, say, in yours truly here, guess what happens? There's an immune response against the proper culture. So the establishment actually doesn't want the proper culture. And I'm going to be talking today about the context of that. So there's a lot of controversy surrounding Mauricio Pochettino. There's a lot of smear campaigns. There's a lot of people who don't like him. There's this idiot online that you hear constantly railing against him who has been graced with a platform. So things like the email controversy or things like making Tim Ream the captain, which was just announced this morning. What is wrong with you people? He's trying to show you what is a proper soccer culture here, and you don't like it. You don't like it when he rants in the press conferences, where he treats journalists or reporter questions as kind of silly, and he lets you know about it. Do you want a proper soccer culture or not? Here we go.
All right, Gary. So the last time we chatted, we were predicting, right, what Pochettino's roster might look like. It just so happened that maybe the next day, I think right before we're about to publish, the roster gets leaked. Okay. We don't need to talk too much about the actual roster itself today, Gary, but I want to go kind of behind the scenes into everything American soccer. I first want to start by asking you, who do you think actually leaked the roster? Who would benefit from the roster being leaked? And I was pretty surprised that when Fox did their whole announcement show, right, the 2 hour long show where they announced the guys, call it out, and then a little press conference with Pochettino, nobody brought it up to Poch to say, hey, the roster got leaked. How do you feel about that? Or, who do you think it was? What are your thoughts on the whole roster leak, Gary?
Who leaked it? I have no idea. It's not one person. I'm pretty sure about that because I don't think any quote unquote reporter slash journalist is going to risk everything on just one source. Has to be multiple sources that they kind of cross check. So who would know about the roster? Obviously, Pochettino, his internal staff would know. And from the looks of it, all the players were already aware who had made it and who had not made it prior to that leak. So all the players know, and then the players' families know, and then the players' agents probably know. So it's and internal to US soccer, maybe there's a good, healthy number of people who work for the federation know. And, that's so many people already, Benny, that it doesn't even have to leak from those sources to a reporter. Those people in and of themselves leak it to other people, which leak it to other people, which leak it to other people. So the MLS franchises probably knew whether Diego Luna was in or out or what, like it probably grew to hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of people already knowing what the roster was. And so it's not that difficult for within that cohort, that bubble of several hundred people or even 1,000 people knowing that those people speak to the typical MLS reporters and people covering the monopoly here in this game. So it's pretty easy for a reporter journalist to be getting hints or be getting the full roster beforehand. Very, very easy. And then they can cross reference very, very easily. Now, whether there is an agenda or a motive behind why somebody would leak it and say, here you go, reporter, here's the full thing. That's another question in and of itself. Could there be some interest in doing so? I mean, sure. I don't know. Maybe you can speculate, Benny, as to why somebody would be interested in doing that. It's curious that it was leaked on Friday. Could be a coincidence, but as we all know, Fridays are typically very slow news days. And so when you do it on Friday, it doesn't get all that much attention versus if it were leaked on a Monday, a Tuesday, Wednesday, or a Thursday. I don't know, Benny. All I know is it doesn't take much of a genius to realize how easy it is for the news to get out. I like how other countries do it better, which is a curious thing also. And that would be if you look at Ancelotti, when he announced the Brazil roster, it didn't seem like there were any leaks at all. And from Ancelotti's own testimonials in interviews later, he said, actually, I had two sheets, going into the press conference when I was going to announce the roster. And I actually, when I'm walking up, I actually didn't know whether I was going to go this way or that way. And then I kind of last second decision, I'm like, okay, this is going to be my roster. And then what did it all entail? He's in a press conference, he's sitting down, and he just starts reading off a piece of paper. These are my players. And all the players didn't know who was making it, didn't know who was not making it. Nobody knew anything. That's the way to do it. But here in the United States, everything is so backwards and effed up that it's a circus, Benny. It's a clown show here.
Yeah, I told you this yesterday, but I was thinking that potentially Pochettino himself wanted it to come out early in order to start putting out fires early and having to deal with all this nonsense that the media is going to come out with of why didn't you take this guy or why didn't you take that guy? So I thought that was one possibility because if I'm Pochettino and I didn't want the roster to come out and it does come out, I'd be pissed, bro. I'd be
Yeah.
pissed because then you're like, who can I trust here in U.S. soccer? Maybe I gave the roster to my inner staff and that's it. Obviously we don't know all the behind the scenes, but
No, the
it,
way
it
the
didn't
way
it, it didn't seem like he was too upset about it, or he
the way
nothing
that
was.
yeah. The
Sorry.
way the federation works, from my experience, they're very bureaucratic, they're very structured, they want everything to work like a machine. They don't want any surprises. They don't want an Ancelotti situation. They kind of want to know, okay, Mauricio, who's on the team? Oh, okay, you should email everybody, a week ahead of time. Oh, okay, you should tell the players who didn't make it ahead of time. Like, they want all that, like a typical bureaucracy, because they love control, Benny, control. So I don't think Pochettino maybe necessarily had a lot of say in the matter, or if he did have a say, he chose to like pick his battles. Like, okay, fine, you guys want to do it that way, I'll do it that way. But insofar as him personally leaking it, how you're suggesting or hypothesizing, I don't think so at all. Because look at just his commentary throughout his tenure. He doesn't give a fuck. He's not out there trying to control the narrative or doing all the political nonsense or the optics things. Oh, how is this going to be perceived versus how is that going to be perceived? Oh, I want to control this. He doesn't give a fuck. He's above all of that nonsense, MLS bullshit and US soccer bullshit. He could care less. And if it got leaked, he's like, no, fuck you. Who gives a fuck? I don't care.
Yeah, 100%, Gary. Let's quickly talk about the whole email situation. And before we do, let's remember the context that we're discussing here. Adult professional players, Gary. Adults professional players. And everybody here in American soccer is pissed off that Pochettino decided to send an email rather than calling, right? They cite, oh, look at Jesse Marsh in Canada. He called every single player that he brought up in the camps, and Pochettino doesn't care about the players. And I'm like, guys, these guys are professionals. And he's exactly right. I think he's the one that said is that when he was a player and he didn't get called up, you don't want the coach calling you to basically shadow your dreams of not playing in the World Cup. Like, for me personally, I would love to receive an email rather than a call if I'm not making it to the World Cup. It's like, all right, said what needed to be said. I'll put my head down and continue to work. But why do you think everybody's having such a big problem with the whole email thing, Gary?
Because the culture here in the United States is one of pussies. Everybody's a pussy, Benny. And it mimics what's happening in broader society, not just soccer. But since we have more of a soccer specific audience, we all know this from youth soccer. So we have a youth soccer, suburban, white, bitch ass, pussy, monolithic culture that's controlling the game here. And that extends through the media, it extends through the fan base, it branches out from there. And so, yes, what do they want? They're like, oh, No, the professional thing to do would have been, hop on a phone call, hop on a Zoom call, and uh, offer the players some solace or encouragement, and that it's nothing personal, and it just makes sense. The team we want to play this way, and it just. I had to pick somebody, Diego, and just this time wasn't. You're young, you have a big future ahead of you. You've got a whole other cycle. I'm sure you're going to be playing in World Cups, but this time around, I opted maybe for some more experienced guys. What the fuck? Are you? This is the most ridiculous thing ever for people to want that to be occurring. Hey, I can understand if we're dealing with 12-year-old boys or whatever, and you have to pick a team to go out of state or something, and you have too many players on the youth club roster, and you can only take 16 or something. Okay, you sit down with the kid and you explain, blah 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 blah. I can kind of get behind that for sure, but like you said, these are grown ass men who are professional athletes, and you want the national team manager to do this whole exercise. Benny, this is a reflection of society that we have in the States, and it needs to change. And thank God we have somebody like Pochettino at the pulpit, at the head of the ship, kind of showing us, no, this is how top countries around the world behave and comport themselves. This is how top managers across the world behave themselves and comport themselves. Hey, could a top manager maybe out there be calling his players and letting them down lightly or whatever? Yeah, I'm sure it probably exists, but it's kind of case by case. And this guy chose this route, and it's perfectly acceptable. In fact, I encourage that that's what should be happening, because we need to swing the pendulum the other way, Benny. People need to wake the fuck up and realize we need to be a harder country. I kind of quote tweeted somebody else's ex post where they were interviewing a Argentine professional footballer, and he's giving, was it an Argentine professional? I don't remember who it is, but they're basically talking about the youth soccer culture in Argentina from the top clubs there, from River Plate, from Boca, and the youth players there. They're kind of figuring out how to even get to training, hitching a ride, hopping on buses, and then leaving right away and starting to sell cardboard, to make ends meet for their families, and players get cut all the time from those circumstances. Look at how those players, that culture is born and bred. It's no wonder, and this is what the guy who posted this said. It's no wonder why Argentines develop a certain class of footballer. And here we want to that's 10-year-old Argentinian kids, having to deal with that sort of situation. And here we want to have the national team manager call up a 25-year-old man, who has all this experience and is making $1 million a year, or $3 million a year, or even if they're only making $200K a year, to get on the phone. Hey, Diego, how you doing? Listen, I'm so sorry. Fuck off.
Let me, because I saw that you reposted that, Gary, but some of the comments underneath, and I'm curious to see how you respond. A lot of the comments are like, oh, so what, Gary, you want 10-year-olds in America to be poor and not have food and grow hungry just so we can develop pros? A lot
That's
of
what,
people
well,
comment.
well, that's what's called a straw man, right? Is you don't even actually address the real post or the real situation. You create some other context and you attack that other context to try to make the original post seem unreasonable or lacking credibility or lacking legitimacy. It's silly. Unless I explicitly say, hey, I want 10-year-olds to be dirt poor and sleeping under a bridge, that's not what I'm saying.
No, I hear you, Gary. I was just curious to see what you would say to that. Quickly, I want to talk about, you brought up Diego Luna. It's clear on the sporting side that he wasn't ready. Okay. But what do you think of the past year, Gary? U.S. soccer has been marketing him as kind of like one of the faces of the USMNT. one of the faces of the World Cup. I know Pochettino came out and said a couple of camps ago, like, "Hey, look, just because you guys are in the promos doesn't mean that you're making the roster." Okay, but what is your take on American soccer kind of using Diego Luna without even knowing is he going to be in the World Cup or not?
Well, I told you many a times, and people have heard this many a times, but I'll offer a different angle, kind of. American soccer, MLS specifically, the monopoly operates based on marketing, perception, optics, politics. That is their top of the list, right, of priorities, is making sure that those things are world class. That's really what they are world class at. And so that they can maneuver their prospective customers in line and their existing customers into alignment, and the whole ecosystem, that will enrich them into alignment. So they're very good at this. So what is best for MLS? To maximize the number of players that they have on the national team, because the national team gets global attention, unlike MLS, and the national team is ultimately the the main proxy by which you judge the health of American soccer. So if there's more MLS players on the national team, that kind of enables them to say, see, we're developing the best of the best. And see, this is where you want to start your career. And see, customers or fans, we're doing the right things. So they need to maximize that. Now, with respect to the Diego Luna thing, he is one of the beneficiaries of what I've spoken about many a times, is that in 2018, 2019, 2000, yeah, that a whole bunch of players said, fuck MLS, I'm leaving. I'm going to Europe, I'm going to South America, I'm going to Mexico. And then MLS pivoted and said, holy shit, we need to play the kids, unlike how we were doing before. And we need to export players abroad, unlike before, because if we don't export players abroad, guess who's going to be on the national team? All the players who gave us the middle finger are going to end up being the base of the U.S. men's national team. So come 2026 World Cup, we're going to have 0 MLS players, on the national team. It's going to be everybody who abandoned us. And what does that narrative communicate to their customers, to their prospective customers, to the marketplace? It says, yeah, players should not be in MLS. So what did they do? They started playing the kids. And what did they do? They started exporting some players overseas, like the Brendan Aaronsons, like all those guys, right? Like the Pepis, like blah, 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 in order to combat what was going to happen to them. So when they did that, now they ensured that the senior men's national team is going to have at least a healthy dose of MLS representation. But they also want players who are currently in MLS to be on the national team. To combat the narrative, like, see, you want to be on the national team, you got to get out of MLS. Even if you start here, you got to get out. No. We need to get our Roldan in there. We need to get our Berhalter in there. We need to get our Diego Luna in there. We need to get our, what are the other guys? The Miles Robinsons in there or whatever. So Diego Luna is part of their storyline. It's a storyline because what he has that is also unique is he's young, right? And he is Latino or Mexican American, right? So you want to appease that kind of population also. And he's marketable from an old school American soccer perspective too. If you recall, like in the 90s or something, why was Alexi Lalas famous and liked or whatever? Oh, the redhead, look at you stick out. And when you stick out, you're marketable and you can create stories. Oh, look at Kobe Jones. Why is he marked? Oh, the dreads, and his short in stature and he's like all these sorts of things are marketing. Diego Luna, neck tattoos, right? And he's got a story behind him as to how he got his start. And he did the USL thing for a little bit, even though they don't give USL any love, right? But they show like we MLS elevated this player, and we care about the Latino community, the Hispanic community, the young community, the trouble community, the net tattoo community. And so they did their best. They did their best, but ultimately, I think Pochettino has final say, and he's like, nah, No thanks. And people are having a cow. You know what it reminds me of, Ben? Kind of. It's different, so don't get it twisted, but it's similar from an optics sort of thing. When Jurgen Klinsmann left Landon Donovan out. So ultimately, the national team manager, come time to pick the roster, he's like, no, I'm not picking this Landon Donovan character. He's like not committed, and I see a degree of toxicity in him, and I need a cohesive group here, and I just don't want this guy on my squad. Chop suey. And American soccer went crazy, and they turned on Jurgen, obviously. And the MLS turned on Jurgen, obviously. So here, it's not the profile of Landon Donovan, but Pochettino's like, no, bro, like, no, you're not coming along.
Do you in any way like feel for the guy though, Gary? Because obviously you touched on it in the last episode. You said that when you watched him, it reminds you of a child playing amongst men, right? But that being said, he was marketed every single day. He was in the interviews, and I feel like there wasn't even an interview that came out like 3 days before the roster leak, and Diego sitting there saying like, "Oh yeah, I'm really excited to like get with the guys, and I'm really hoping I get this call. I have a really good feeling." Like, do you feel bad for him that U.S. Soccer used him like that?
First off, I want to be very clear. US soccer is controlled by MLS. Okay. So this is critical for everybody to understand because MLS is benefiting by kind of trying to make it seem like they're separate and US soccer does its own thing and we do our own thing. And that enables MLS to point the finger and scapegoat US soccer when things go wrong or things go bad. No, MLS controls in a very corrupt way the federation. So it's MLS is the one who's driving all the marketing of Diego Luna, even though it's coming from the nonprofit organization that is US Soccer. Do I feel bad for him? Of course I do, Benny. I have said repeatedly over the years, even if I offer criticisms and critiques of players, that I am always in favor of players. I fight for players, for the rights of players to maximize their earning potential, to maximize their rights, to maximize their freedom, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. I should be careful. I shouldn't say always because there are some exceptions. If a player is a dick or a cunt, you know what I'm saying, and is doing certain things that go against those things that I just expressed, okay, F that guy. Or if somebody is dishonest or disloyal or untrustworthy, fuck that guy too, you know? But generally speaking, I'm in the player's court. Of course I feel bad for the kid. Are you kidding me? It's kind of heartbreaking. You grow up dreaming of playing in this thing. The good thing is I'm not that heartbroken. I shouldn't say it that heart. I'm not heartbroken at all. Okay. But I don't feel that bad because one, I don't think he merits it. So that's very easy for me to not feel that bad about it. And then two, he is young. And if he truly is that good, he'll be in contention the next cycle and the cycle after that. And maybe even the cycle after that. If he truly is that good. So I don't feel that bad. I would feel a lot worse for some of the other guys that would be displaced to include him.
Got it. Last thing on Luna, Gary, would you suggest that he makes a move overseas as quick as possible?
Of course, man. Of course. That's what look, I think all players for the oh, you guys get it, right? I think generally all players want to go and play in the best leagues and the best clubs in the world. And that's not here. MLS is the least competitive environment possibly in the entire world. It doesn't matter that, oh, any team can win, MLS Cup, and there's parity. And on any given day, anybody can beat anybody. That is not the definition of competition. Definition of
Yeah.
competition is how hard you have to exert yourself to achieve success. And right here, there are no incentives, or the incentives are so negligible compared to the rest of the world that everybody involved in an MLS franchise doesn't have to be operating at peak performance at all times because it doesn't matter. So it's the least competitive thing perhaps in the entire world. So should he leave? Of course he should leave. Is he going to be able to leave? I don't know, because the time to leave, in my opinion, or one very good time to leave, would have been when he was at the peak of his marketing powers, right? And when he actually played with the national team and actually performed with the national team, and his marketing was through the roof. I'm sure there were opportunities to go, but then again, it doesn't all depend on him. It depends on MLS, whether they will allow him to leave and under what circumstances they'll allow that to happen.
Yeah, I can see it where MLS is not going to let their golden boy go anywhere, bro. Like, probably, I bet you deals probably or offers came in, but they're going to shut them down left and right because, hey, look at this kid. We can easily market him in. But to your point about the MLS not being competitive, Gary, it's funny because I posted a reel from our last discussion on the roster leak, and you were talking about what is Berhalter going to do and what is Reldon going to do, right? And all of the MLS super fans come into the comments saying, like, Gary, are you delusional? Like, have you not seen Berhalter in his last 10 performances with MLS? He's going off. He's scoring goals. Like, he's the best player in MLS right now. And I'm thinking to these guys, like, guys, this is not a real league. This is not real competition. And sure, if they're producing there, they have acres of time and space, Gary. Acres of
Yeah.
time and space compared to the global game. And it's like even Roldan in his last game with Sounders, so much time and space, literally pass the ball to the other team and they go and score a goal. And these guys are saying, oh, no, they're going to perform well at the World Cup because look at how well they're doing in MLS. It's crazy, dude.
Yeah. I mean, you never know. A player is a player and they could rise to the occasion. It's possible that they could have good showings at the World Cup. I mean, anything can happen. It's just when you look at quote unquote stats in MLS, like how many goals has Berhalter scored or Diego Luna or assists or something, it has to be taken with a grain of salt for the reasons that we just went off on. It is not a competitive environment. Nobody's going there 100 miles an hour to lock you down and to ensure that you can't do shit. Nah, everybody's kind of in chill mode. They're operating at 70, 80% of their capacity. And it's a leisure, it's a league of leisure. That's actually what we should coin it.
I like that.
Hey,
We'll get
it
shirts.
doesn't, by the way, it doesn't mean that players in MLS aren't any good. It's possible that there are extremely good players in MLS. It's just you're not maximizing your capabilities when you're playing in MLS. So
Yeah.
you actually don't know. It's hard to know whether it will translate overseas, yes or no, because it's hard to gauge whether they're any good or not.
No, it was Bielsa that said after the 5-0 loss to the US, Bielsa said, right, MLS makes players lazy. Right. And it's
He
so
said it
true. I mean,
before. He said it before, and then
and
Uruguay
everybody
lost.
went off on it.
Of course.
Of course, everybody's going to go off on him, right? After 5-0 thrashing from the US, but he's 100% right, Gary. I mean, when you know that your spot is already secured for the next year, why are you going to go 1,000% every single game? Right. And then if you look at the playoffs, okay, the playoffs look a little bit more intense. Well, now you know that the rest of the season, they weren't operating at their max potential, so and I don't think the U.S. national team will ever be successful on the global stage until we have 0 players on MLS in the roster,
Yeah.
which probably will never happen unless there's an open system.
Yeah, for sure. That's you said it. That's where it becomes clear for those without the discerning eye that are kind of cringing right now when I'm saying that MLS is not competitive. The proof is reserved for mathematics, okay? But you know what I mean. The proof is in observing MLS playoff matches after having watched MLS regular season matches. It's clearly a completely different level of intensity, energy, and effort. There, the players are actually operating at full bore, holding nothing back. Okay, why didn't you do that during the season? If you look at matches in the rest of the world, every single weekend in regular season matches, it's 100% full bore, holding nothing back. So the entire 36 game season or 38 game season or whatever it is, depending on the league overseas, every single weekend is a playoff match, a do or die match, basically.
Yeah. And it's funny too that people came out against Bielsa saying, oh, well, look at these MLS players. They just beat you 5-0. Well, bro, they weren't playing an MLS game. They were playing to go to the World Cup. So of course they're going to be going balls to the walls. Of course they're going to be going 1,000 miles an hour. Versus on a Sunday game against FC Dallas, it's like, no pasa nada. I'm going to chill
And let's
today.
not forget that anything can happen in football. So a shit team can beat a really good team once in a while.
Very true. I mean, before, people laugh at this, before France won the World Cup and we played a friendly versus them, US versus France, pretty sure we tied 1-1, no?
Yeah.
And people would say, oh, well, France is the World Cup champion and we just tied them, the future is bright.
And how quickly the American USMNT fan base forgets. They talk about results. Okay, Pochettino got if you want to consider it how they're considering it with MLS players, a massive result against Uruguay. Massive. And I guess they forgot. All the narratives have disappeared apparently. And remember that I told you after that match with I think it was Uruguay and Japan, they got a result that the fan base is high now and the media is high now, but the moment Pochettino doesn't get a good result or something, they'll flip 100% like a pancake on the other side. But I'm like, bro, like Pochettino has this team doing what we recommend day in and day out, and he's been doing it, implementing it, and trying to turn away the shit show that the U.S. men's national team has been for 6 years, and the people can't see it. They cannot see it, Ben. And so now, finally, with the results against Paraguay and Uruguay, everybody's a pancake. They flip from shitting on him to okay, the U.S. men's national team is buzzing, everything's clicking at the right time. This is amazing. And like, bro, like literally yesterday you were shitting on the guy. But Benny, they'll flip again in an instant. And then they'll make up stories as to why they said the things that they said positively. They'll say, let's say he get whatever. Let's say the next string of bad results from Pochettino, whether it be in the friendlies or in the World Cup itself, they'll be like, yeah, that shit from Uruguay, it's because the Uruguay players, it was just a friendly, guys. It was just that will be those were just friendlies. Those don't count. But clearly they're counting now, though, like big time. Like some people are saying, fuck, like we might make a deep run in the World Cup. So clearly the friendlies do count now. When the team fails, when Pochettino gets L's on his record, they'll be like, super fraud. I knew it all along. That thing with Uruguay, those were just friendlies. And that's exactly what happened. And the moment Pochettino does good again, now they're going to play these friendlies before the World Cup. Let's say we beat Senegal, we beat Germany going to the World Cup. The narrative flips all. Wow, our team is amazing. Berhalter scored that free kick goal, bro. Oh, wow. Like, incredible. They'll flip like a pancake, Benny. And if we lose those matches, again, it'll be more trashing on Pochettino over and over again. They'll write countless articles. This guy's a fraud. He doesn't care. He came here for a payday. He's already got his next job lined up. And then you go into the World Cup and he comes in first in the group stage, thrashes Turkey or whatever, because all that could happen. They'll flip again. Wow, our country's amazing. These people are not rooted in any sort of reality.
Yeah, they just go off the results, Gary, every single time. And we're gonna. I mean, their audience, you're gonna see, man. Let's talk, Gary, about this AC Milan rumor. Why is it? Everybody has such a problem with it, man. But I think everybody's forgetting Pochettino only had a 2-year contract with the U.S. Right? Why are people so upset about that?
Well, the general fan base gets their cues from the media and who they listen to. Okay. They don't have, this is insulting. I don't care. They don't have a mind of their own. They sit there and they are scrolling through their X feed or whatever. And then they see the imbecile Hercules Gomez who has an insecurity issue and doesn't like Pochettino. And he starts up saying, "Oh, see, he doesn't care. He's already communicating with other clubs, lining up his next gig. That's totally wrong. That's unprofessional. He's not focused on what he should be focused on." And guess what? The people who actually think that guy has credibility and understands football and understand and is objective or whatever, they they're like, "Oh yeah, you're right, Herc," and they start writing their ex posts, repeating the same sort of things along different angles. That's how this happens, Benny. The people get their cues from the media.
And again, there's nothing wrong with him meeting with AC Milan. No?
No. Well, from what I understand, he didn't have a meeting, and even if he did have a meeting, I have no issue with that. But it doesn't sound like he had a meeting. His representatives had meetings. That is what agents do. You the agent or agents know he's out of contract after the World Cup. Do you think are they supposed to sit there and be like, "Well, I'm not working for you, Mauricio, until the World Cup's over, and then you're out of contract, and then I'm going to go shop you around"? On what planet does that seem reasonable, or does that seem correct? We have imbeciles here in our country.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure he came out and said, like, look, one, it wasn't me who met with AC Milan, it was my representatives. And two, we have friends all around the world that are in football and that we've known for many years. So yeah, if my representatives are meeting with AC Milan, there's no problem in that. But I like that he came back at the media and said, look, guys, I'm here. I'm 100% committed to this national team, to the World Cup. If somebody were to call me and say, hey, Mauricio, we want you, but you have to start tomorrow, I'll say no, because I'm here with the U.S. men's national team. And again, I just think it's more noise and the establishment trying to attack Pochettino, man. This is the thing that I'm worried about is I keep seeing comments everywhere that, oh, see, this is why you don't get an international manager. We need an American who actually understands the players and how things work in this country. And it's just, I have a feeling whenever Pochettino leaves, everybody or most of the USMNT fans are going to be fighting for an American manager again, which hopefully doesn't happen, man.
I predicted all of this, Benny. Maybe you can search back in our podcast recordings or archives where I predicted all of this, a year ago or over 6 months ago for sure, that this is it precisely what was the narrative that was going to be developed, cultivated, leading up to the end of the World Cup, such that the establishment now has the political capital to get one of their lapdogs in the chair. This is so predictable. This is how they operate, Benny. So yes, it's already commenced that, see, we need an American. The foreigner doesn't care about us. Guys, the foreigner, first off, has way more knowledge, experience, wisdom about this game than any of our domestic guys do. Don't you want the most qualified, the best one to lead our nation? That's one thing. Yeah, but Gary, if he doesn't care, then all that is lost. Do you think the guy doesn't care about winning? The guy is a perpetual winner. These world-class managers, if we want to stick with the managers, they care about winning like a mother effer. No matter, I can't believe I have to explain this, that the guy wants to win and that the guy's going to do everything in his power to win.
And it's a World Cup on home soil. It doesn't get bigger than that, man. Like, how can people question his loyalty to the team or not wanting to win? Like, come on, guys. What are we doing?
And it's his first World Cup as a manager. And it is an incredible privilege to have that opportunity in your life. You don't know if you'll ever get another opportunity to coach in a World Cup. You don't know that. You think the guy's just like, I'm just going to ride this thing out and then I'll just go to Milan or wherever. And then I'll be serious over there because this is kind of like silly. I can't believe we have to explain these things.
Somebody has to do it because Fox Soccer won't.
But we have, and I've been on this tear recently, again, because I do not care anymore. We have the dumbest fan base in the world. The dumbest. And I said moments ago that hey, it's just the fan base is following the lead of the media. The media is basically giving them their storylines and their narratives and what to think. Okay, but that means that the fan base is that stupid that they just get their cues from the media and regurgitate what the media says. We have the dumbest fan base in the world, Benny. I'm going to say
Yeah.
it over and over and over again. I've been tempted, just as fun, when I take a little bit of a break from my work and then you had to take a step back, to just go on X, and then immediately I'm already going to see some stupid fan or some stupid media take about Pochettino or the national team, something. I feel like screenshotting them and just saying dumbest fan base in the world, and then getting another one, dumbest fan base in the world, and then get another one, over and over and over again, just example after example after example.
But is it their fault, Gary? I mean, they've been brainwashed since the time that they were young,
Well,
and this is all they know. So how can you blame them?
yeah, well, I'm not blaming them. I'm just stating a fact. Dumbest fan base in the world. Oh,
Um,
Gary, the ultimate judge will be the World Cup results. Let's see then. Time will tell. No, you will not see, and you won't understand what the reality is depending on the results. Pochettino could go all the way to the semifinal, and that won't make him a genius. It was just, frankly, if the U.S. gets to the semifinal, it's not Pochettino. It's complete luck. It's a Greece 2004 situation that occurred, or it's a uh, South Korea. When the World Cup was over there in South Korea. That's how the U.S. got there. It's not Pochettino's genius. So if anybody comes out and says, "Oh, Pochettino, it's his genius that got us to the semifinal," nah, that was fucking luck. And everybody needs a little bit of luck. Argentina needed a little bit of luck to win the last World Cup. France needed a little bit of luck the prior year to that. Germany needed a little bit of luck when they won it last. There's luck involved. And if Pochettino crashes out of the group stage, first off, it's not Pochettino. The team crashes out. It doesn't prove that Pochettino's a moron and doesn't know what he's doing at all. Marcelo Bielsa, with one of the best Argentina squads ever leading into a World Cup, crashed out on the group stage in 2002. Doesn't make Marcelo Bielsa a moron, an idiot, incompetent. Nonsense. He's a super genius. Shit happens in football. So the results of the World Cup aren't going to prove anything.
but are you saying that the coach doesn't have an impact on the results of the team or
Very
determines how far
little.
a team can go?
Little. I mean, but little means a lot too. Let's say the coach has a 10% influence. Okay, well, if the coach gets everything right, then you're getting a plus 10% to the 90%, right? That is responsible by the players and that stuff. So that's helpful for sure. And if a coach gets everything wrong, then he contributes 0%, let's say. So that could be the difference between winning and not winning. But ultimately, Benny, there's a reason why only 8 countries have won the World Cup ever. And that's not even a good statistic to throw out there, because there's only been like 20 World Cups or something. So saying that there's only ever been 8 doesn't really mean all that much. I mean, it kind of makes sense. Like, what do you want? You want 20 teams to have won all the 20, you know what I mean? So, but there's a reason it's always the same sort of superpowers that end up very deep in the tournament and combating the finals or the semifinals. And that's because of the players, not because of who the national team coach is. It's the player quality. That's why you go deep. Can the manager
Yeah,
make a little bit? Yeah. Argentina didn't win the World Cup because of Scaloni.
no, for sure. I think the coach is. I think the main impact of the coach is the culture of the team and how you can get a player to run through a wall for you, basically. Right. I mean, I was just watching this new documentary on HBO about the U.S. men's national team, and the first episode is about the 2022 World Cup in Qatar, right? And it's all behind the scenes stuff and things like that, Gary. But you see the day before the knockout round, right, when the U.S. was going to go to play Netherlands. Okay, Greg Berhalter sits the team in a circle, little kumbaya session, and he's going around asking the players, "Hey, guys, I want everybody to share like why you want to win tomorrow." And you look around at the players and their body language, and they're just like Greg, what are we doing, bro? Like, of course we wanted to. We're playing in the World Cup. round of 16, like, of course we want to win. Why are we sitting here like we're in 8th grade in a circle expressing our feelings? You know, of course we want to win the fucking game. We're at the World Cup, man. And so I think it's just little things like that. Like, I don't think Argentina was sitting in a circle before the final and Scaloni's asking Messi, like, hey, why do you want to win tomorrow? Like, come on,
Yeah.
man.
The
Little things
purest
like that. Little
the
things like
pu- yeah, the purest expression or mental image that people can have, perhaps, around that is imagine Zlatan Ibrahimovic in that locker room and Berhalter, going around the room and what is Zlatan thinking in those moments? That's a perfect visual. And yes, guys, the reason I give that visual is because Zlatan is unique in the sense that he's always been very outspoken as to he lets his internal fire out into public. And so you get to see it. Most players don't let the public see that internal dialogue or that internal fire and that internal confidence and that internal arrogance and that internal vocabulary. They don't. They keep it within themselves because most of us have kind of been programmed to be quote unquote professional. Oh, it's unprofessional to say or do or act a certain way. And so nobody talks, nobody says that stuff. They keep it way behind closed doors. Zlatan has always been open about it. But I guarantee you that all the proverbial winners, the top, the cream of the professional athlete crop in football, every single one of those players is thinking the same thing inside. They're just not letting it out for everybody to see. So it doesn't have to be just Messi. It could have been anybody on the Argentina roster. It could be anybody on the Brazil roster. It could be anybody in the Dutch roster. It could be anybody in the Portuguese roster. That if Berhalter is, or the coach, whoever is, or Brian Schmetzer from Sounders is in the locker room doing this sort of kumbaya sort of thing, every single one of those players is thinking inside, what kind of a circus am I in right now?
Yeah, we're gonna have to inject the clip because you can literally see the internal dialogue of the players thinking exactly what you just said, Gary. I mean, you could just tell like they do not want to be in that room. And don't get me wrong, I think there is a time and place for that stuff, but fucking do that shit 3 months before you leave for the tournament when you have a day of team bonding and social. But on the night before and you doing a little kumbaya circle, like, come on, bro. I think the players just considered it a joke, honestly. But that was their mentality and that was their motivation before playing a knockout round in the World Cup. So of course they're gonna go out and get thrashed, bro, by the Netherlands.
I don't know what to
Crazy.
say.
I will say one thing, Gary. U.S. soccer and MLS in conjunction, extremely good at marketing. Because after watching that documentary, I watched 2 episodes. I'm actually like, I want to see these guys succeed, man. The players, at least, and even like in watching Pochettino and the way that he addresses the team, I'm kind of rooting for the men's national team. Honestly, Gary. I mean, this is my country. I was born here. I want to get behind them and support them, man. You know.
Good.
And I think you realize, I think a lot of times we forget that the players are human beings and they have lives outside of football. They have families, they have kids. And I don't know, for me, it was cool just to see behind the scenes of everything that goes on, man. It made me want to support the team.
Well, that's what marketing does. They've
Yeah.
done their job well, even to you. You've been brainwashed. I already told you. I want them to get to a quarterfinal for the political optics reasons and make it more difficult on the monopoly to further consolidate power and get their way even easier. Yes. I'll repeat it again for those who are new here. If we don't get to a quarterfinal, the monopoly has the perfect narrative with its media muppets saying we got the big bad foreigner as the national team coach, and look what happened. Shocking, really bad. Shut the fuck up, fans. You don't know anything. We're going to take it from here. And then they're going to implant their media lapdog or their MLS lapdog. And then if we get to like a semifinal, which is beyond the quarters, the establishment will have the narrative. See, We know what we're doing. Everything is going according to plan. MLS is the best thing to have ever occurred to this country's soccer ever. And we need to continue doing this, and we need to consolidate even more power so that we can be even better next time around. Quarterfinals right smack in the middle between those two. So the two polarized factions, the pro MLS and the kind of, hey, we need freedom, opportunity, and meritocracy faction, they can go to war, and there's a better chance that the freedom fighters, have more credibility.
2 follow-up questions, Gary. Let's say the US makes a semifinal, okay? Wouldn't it be almost impossible for US Soccer MLS to, when Pochettino is done with the USMNT, to bring in, like you always say, an American lapdog, right?
Yes.
And number 2, I don't foresee MLS players really having a major impact on the roster. I mean, I think there's maybe 6 or 7 of them. So let's say they don't have an impact. How can MLS come out and now say, oh, look, see, MLS is the greatest thing on earth if the MLS players on the roster barely play?
Okay. Well, they've already started attacking that second narrative. When the roster was announced, MLS came out and said, oh, 50% of the roster, played in MLS or has MLS history. And so they're including players who never played in MLS, but they happen to have been at an MLS academy for a year even. So like a Weston McKennie, they're throwing him into those statistics. Oh, Weston McKennie, MLS, we did this. Or Chris Richards, who was barely for a year at FC Dallas, he's thrown into the statistics. So anybody who went overseas, or Freeman or whatever, they're throwing all these guys. Oh, Freeman actually did play in MLS, right? But they're throwing all the European guys who happen to have had any sort of touch point in any way with MLS. They're throwing them into the statistics. And I get it. They're not lying, okay? But it is misleading to kind of say, McKennie, that's our guy. Chris Richards, that's our guy. No, those motherfuckers left as teenagers. That's why they're among the most important players on the team. They're not going to say that. And hey, why don't you say that a whole whopping 50%? That's huge. 50% never touched MLS at all. That's pretty insane. That half of the roster never even touched MLS. That's a huge number.
Yeah.
So that addresses your situation. If they get to a semifinal, they're going to claim credit, for all these guys and having elevated the national team, even though they left when they were kids. And then 2, you said about the coach situation. The benefit that the establishment will have if they got to a semifinal is that they will use that success as a proxy for the entire health of the ecosystem. And who is the one who has developed this ecosystem? MLS has developed this ecosystem. That's how they'll claim credit. Will be like, what's changed since all the other World Cup appearances? Well, what's changed is MLS has become more mature. Look, our viewership numbers are up. We have more franchises than ever. We created a second tier, MLS Next Pro, on and on and on. That's what's changed. And that is why the national team got to a semifinal.
So no matter what, MLS wins, Gary, is what you're saying.
Unless we're in a quarterfinal, it's the sweet spot. You can't claim exceptional credit at all, because the opposing view is like, hey, you had a World Cup at home and you only got to the quarterfinal when other, it's not that impressive. It's kind of like par for the course. So it's not like anything has gotten any better. And we got to a quarter in 2002 anyway, before MLS was really a thing. And then if you go beneath a quarter, then MLS wins, because it's the big bad foreigner who caused all the problems.
Got it. You just posted on X a couple of days ago about Jesse Marsch. His contract got extended till 2030, till the end of the World Cup. And you said U.S. soccer should be breaking the bank to try to make this happen with Pochettino. Why do you say that, Gary?
Because Pochettino, and let's not forget this, very important to understand, Pochettino only had 18 months with the program. And when you only have 18 months, when he landed here, the player pool was already established, it's set in stone. You can't really influence it very much. The players are the players. Whoever MLS happened to have allowed to go to Europe, those are the guys, that you have to work with. Whoever MLS happened to have elevated earlier in the Berhalter year, in the earlier cycle, that's who Pochettino had to work with. But if you have a full cycle, a full 4 years, on year one, you as the national team manager could be elevating players that MLS has not elevated, or is not propping up, or is not marketing, or is not making a big deal out of. And as a consequence of elevating that category of a player, then the MLS franchise where that player is playing is going to be forced to make that player play and be a central theme of the team. So he gets to develop his own sort of player pool out of nothingness, more so than what Pochettino had. So if you really want to kind of shift the player pool and elevate players that I was going to say that I like, right? But no, it would be the type of player that Pochettino likes. That's what a manager needs, man. You can't do that in 18 months. This guy's job has basically been the following: come into a dumpster fire, a shit show, a garbage player pool, and see what you can do with it.
But Gary, you say all the time, right? MLS doesn't care about developing players. MLS runs U.S. soccer. So you could probably foresee that they're not going to continue with Pochettino, because at the end of the day, they don't care about making soccer in America better. They
Of
don't care
course.
about raising the level of the game. They don't care about developing young players. So why would they keep Pochettino?
No, they would. Well, they wouldn't. They don't want the big bad foreigner, Benny.
Right.
They don't want the foreigner. Pochettino has played decent ball. He hasn't been bad necessarily, but notice he has said things that a cute MLS lapdog would never have said. He has trashed the media. He has kind of suggested the fan base here is soft and weak and doesn't show up for the games and they don't feel it. He's kind of trashed the American soccer culture like we have, but in more diplomatic terms, obviously, than what I do. But from the soft media and American soccer fan base, they're like, whoa, whoa, whoa. What are you doing, Pochettino? This is crazy. You know what you're doing. Most recently with the emails. Whoa, Pochettino, what the F? You're like not even having meetings with these players. That's crazy. Or whoa, Pochettino, you're having your people already talk to other clubs. You're not even. So these things don't happen with an MLS lapdog of a coach. So of course they don't want the big bad foreigner here. They're too much of a wild card. The big bad foreigner doesn't need MLS for his career. He could get two fucks about MLS. Who cares? Imagine if Pep comes here, and Pep is very diplomatic and knows, but Pep will say what he needs to say. That's not good for MLS. It's not good.
That's why Mourinho will never be hired by MLS U.S.
Oh,
soccer.
Mourinho will annihilate this country, man.
I asked you a similar question to this last week, but it was a comment from Cyber Shinobi. I think he frames it a little better. I think it'd be a good way to end. All right. He says, Gary, give your prediction on the impact of this World Cup on American soccer, with no word from USSF on implementing pro rel at the youth/pro level, no update on USL's application for Division One, and MLS Next Pro teams being dropped in USL markets. Will this World Cup seal our fate when it comes to the closed ecosystem in America?
Well, no, I don't. I don't think in those sorts of terms about sealing fates and nothing will ever change. I don't agree with that mentality at all. That, oh, it is what it is. I hate that mentality or that expression. Or um, the use of things like never. It'll never change. This will never happen, etc. That's a loser mentality. That usually comes from people, and I'm not saying this about CyberX Shinobi or anything at all. I understand the question. I'm saying it for more broadly speaking. That usually comes from people who have never accomplished a goddamn thing in their life, and they take no risks and they don't build anything. They're effectively, unfortunately, like drones, just doing their like 9 to 5 and getting a paycheck and trying to make ends meet. And I get it, right? But that's our system beats you down so much, Ben, that you feel impotent and powerless to do anything about anything because you don't even feel that you have power over your own life and your own household and your own future, let alone be able to have any sort of influence over things that are greater than just your household or yourself. And so those sorts of people are the ones that typically say, well, things will never change. This because they feel powerless, Ben. And I'm not one of those people. So I don't have that sort of mentality. So no, I don't think that this World Cup seals our fate and it's going to be a closed ecosystem forever. I kind of already ran through the scenarios of depending on how the national team does, what things happen. The fight will go on. And I don't think the World Cup changes much of anything as much as people like to say, oh, the World Cup is going to blow up soccer in this country and it's going to be such a huge boon for everybody. I don't believe that at all. It's just another little transient, like bringing Leo Messi to MLS. It's a spike, and then things decay back down to their normal equilibrium. Or when Beckham came over, it's a spike, in Hollywood, and you got all these Hollywood people going to watch Galaxy games for a while, and then it decays back down to equilibrium. And it'll be the same thing here with the World Cup. You'll get this big spike in the general public attention or whatever about soccer, and then it'll decay back to an equilibrium. The fight goes on, Ben.
You've been fighting this fight for over 10 years now. Are you at all optimistic about any progress that's been made, or do you think it's kind of been stagnant for the last 10 years?
No, I think a lot of progress has been made in what matters in order to bring about change, which is education. We need to reach a critical mass of people who are educated in the root problem and get pissed off enough about the root problem eventually. And the more people are educated, the higher the probability that powerful people, wealthy people, people who are invested or want to be invested in this ecosystem, people of those characteristics who maybe have their own kids who are interested in soccer and they're seeing like this whole thing is fucked up. So they will then come into the fold and join the quote unquote revolution and be able to torque things with their wealth and with their power. So that's kind of the game plan, but this only happens if you have massive amounts of education as to what is going on. So 10 years, for me, I think 10 years is just a tiny blip in time. This is another thing regarding that group that I just painted with a broad brush that feel powerless and whatever. They view things on such small time scales because, again, I'm generalizing. They're worried about their next paycheck and how they're going to make ends meet with rent and everything. So they're working on those sorts of time scales. Other folks who are focused on bringing about change and are builders, I don't want to say it's a luxury because it's enormous sacrifice and huge risk taking, but the way that you think about things is on much longer time scales. They have a short time preference. So I think of things in 10, 20, 50, 100-year blocks. And I'm not saying that it's going to take 100 years for us to have an open marketplace or something like that, but I'm not too concerned about, oh shit, well, fuck, like if by next year, this doesn't happen or whatever, that means nothing to me. I'm more interested in the journey, the process, the learning that I have throughout my entire trajectory. If things happen after I die, so be it. I had a great time working in this sort of direction.
A pioneer of promotion relegations.
No, but it's not that. It's the principles of opportunity, freedom, and a meritocracy. It just simply happens to be expressed through this market segment.
Yeah. Last question for you, Gary. If the system opens and you're still alive, will you form a club?
Of course.
Start at the lowest tier, work your way up?
Depends. Yeah, depends. But who's going to join up on the team from a money perspective, from a capital perspective, as to what tier you start out at. But if I want to have majority of control, which is probably what I would want, also, because why would I have anybody else control the destiny of the club? Yeah, you start at the lowest tier. What's wrong with that?
I think for sure we'll drop another episode after the two friendlies before the World Cup. No,
Sure, we can go live too. Pick a date, time to go live. Maybe people can write in the comments, when can we have another live stream?
let me see when
Uh,
they play Germany. It might be good to go live after that game. Saturday, June 6th. So that would be next Saturday.
Cool, we can do that.
Go USMNT. I'm a fan now, bro.
So be it.
Hey, you know what though? It's because of Pochettino, dude. I love what he's doing. I love what he's saying, the culture that he's bringing. I'm telling you right now, Gary, USMNT going to the final, bro.
You're an idiot. An idiot. All right, let's end there.